Actually, no, ma. No, I forgot this was there. At least I had to take it myself.
Carrie, can you mute everyone?
Yeah, don't touch it. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for muting. So go ahead, just take in that breath. Be in the space where you're able to close your eyes, please do. And just go ahead and picture your cells. Get into that feeling at the visceral level. And my purpose of this is I just want us to tap into our own cellular intelligence. So notice what you feel. Does your body feel light? Do you feel energized? Do you feel oxygenated? Can you feel electricity flowing throughout your body? Just go ahead and tune in and see what you notice. And feel free to share any sensations in the comments. So our cells are designed at the biological level to be in communication with all of life. So in order for your body to be healthy, the cells have to be in communication with each other. And this cell communication network happens because of the relationship between our gut microbiome, the microbiome of our soil health, and the mitochondria in our cells. And without a healthy microbiome or a relationship to our ecosystems, the cells actually lose their ability to communicate with each other. So glyphosate is most commonly found in Roundup, and it has been one of the largest disruptors of our cell-to-cell communication. So our gut microbiome is only half of a hair thick, and it's designed to be in relationship with our environment, and it's highly sensitive to antibiotics and different chemicals. Just 2 courses of antibiotics increases our risk of major depression within the next 12 months by 60%, which is crazy. And right now, 26% of Americans suffer with diagnosable forms of mental disorders, including depression and anxiety. So our microbiome starts in our nasal cavity. Being barefoot, smelling flowers, being in the healthy diversity of different ecosystems impacts this microbiome. It impacts our biology, and it impacts that electrical magnetic frequency, which is all relates back to our cellular health. So the food we're putting into our bodies is really impacting our health. When we're eating foods that are grown in stressed environments, for instance, glyphosate, the antibiotic, when it's sprayed on the plants, it kills off that microfungi and bacteria in the soil. And that's responsible for breaking down the nutrients for the plants to absorb. So due to glyphosate, the plants are literally starving, and they aren't getting the necessary vitamins and nutrients and minerals that they need in order to be healthy. And this is leading to a chronic stress state and a weakened state in our bodies. Because the plants are stressed, leaving them vulnerable to mold and disease and pests and insects. And this leads to that vicious cycle of spraying more toxins, which creates that breakdown of the microbiome in the first place. So once our cells go into a stressed state, because they aren't feeling that nourishment due to the mitochondria not being fed, then they also become weakened and vulnerable. And as you remember, from the beginning of the talk, all health starts with that cellular health. And the cells are what make up our organs and our glands and the tissues in all of our bodies. And when we're talking about reproductive health, we're talking about the tissue health of the prostate gland, the testes in males, and in the ovaries and in the uterus in women. And prostatitis in men actually occurs from acidosis due to lymphatic congestion and a hypo or underfunctioning or suppression of the adrenal glands. Progesterone is an important anti-inflammatory steroid that is produced in the ovaries. and in the adrenal glands. And if progesterone isn't properly produced because of these hypofunctioning tissues, then a woman can develop ovarian cysts, uterine fibroids, bleeding problems, atypical cells, endometriosis, cancers. So we don't want to take steroids from an external source because this stops our tissues from producing the steroids on their own. Instead, we want to support the functioning of our adrenal glands and our reproductive organs. And in fact, in animal factory farming, animals are exposed to continuous stress, constant exposure to light, which leads to sleep deprivation and difficulty in, their sleeping cycles. There's perpetual noise from machinery and factory equipment. The animals are separated from their family and their natural environment. There's chronic pain, inflammation, poor sanitation, poor waste elimination practices, and excessive antibiotic use. And this also leads animals in being a chronic state of uninterrupted stress. And sadly, most of the state animal cruelty laws don't apply to farm animals. So when we're eating factory farm meats, we're exposed to such high levels of stress, and especially the hormone epinephrine, that our own adrenal glands get overtaxed and stop producing the necessary steroids and hormones that are needed for reproductive health. So supporting our endocrine glands are really important for maintaining our reproductive health. Our thyroid health influences the level, whether or not we get hot flashes as a woman. Our pituitary gland is related back to our ovulation cycles and our menopausal health. Cramping is related to our parathyroid gland. And my favorite way to support the health of our tissues is really by supporting health ecosystems, our healthy microbiome, and then working with the tissue-specific organs for our reproductive organs and our adrenals, by working with herbs that support those. So ingesting foods that are grown in regenerative soils to keep that mitochondrial and cell health communication, and then working to expose ourselves to less factory farm meats for that tissue and adrenal health is just huge for our reproductive health. So I just really wanted to tie in how our cellular health is related to our is related to our environment, which is also related to the foods we're eating, and how this directly impacts our reproductive health and adrenal health. So just wanted to tie in those different facts, and then welcome and open it up to Carrie to share her story.
This Carrie, right? All right. I am holding my little babe right now, so if he acts up, I'm sorry. But yeah, so I just want to share with you all, I went through a really long journey in reproductive health issues. I have 4 children that I've birthed, and 2 of those were from when I was very young. However, even in my past marriage that I had a miscarriage in between my son and my daughter. So there was a sign. Miscarriage, I just want to talk about, is common but not normal. And we've talked about that in some of our other talks as well, in understanding the difference between what we have started to call normal, because we see it so frequently. So this was a sign that when I was in my very early 20s, that my endocrine system was not in proper balance. And I think we look at miscarriage a lot of times as like, oh, it's just a mystery, or it just happens, and it's pretty common, and it's become this thing where women don't, one second, I'm managing the waiting room here, where women don't tell people that they're pregnant until they're in the safe zone, or 12 weeks plus. And that's something that really hit me when I realized we kind of come into the situation with shame, oh, we had a miscarriage, so we don't talk about it. And we definitely need support when we're experiencing these things. But this call today is really about bringing light to why you might be experiencing them. So my journey, I had 1 miscarriage with my ex-husband, and then when I met my new husband, we had been trying to make a baby since my youngest daughter at the time was 3 years old. So it took us over 5 years, and we had 5 miscarriages in that time. And it was incredibly heartbreaking. It was really, really hard on all of us to be able to keep processing another loss, another loss, another loss. And sometimes, you know, the most common time, like it would be between 8 and 10 weeks. And I want to talk about why that is. But then one of them was at 14 weeks. So then it was extremely heartbreaking and just couldn't understand why we kept experiencing this loss. And I was having several other symptoms. So it wasn't just miscarriage. It was fatigue. It was belly issues. It was constipation. It was lightheadedness. There was all these other things that were coming involved. And this was what really triggered me to look deeper into my health issues. And so, in weight gain as well. And so I was experiencing all these things. I found out I had autoimmune disease. I had Hashimoto, I had lupus, early onset lupus. So it wasn't like full blown yet, I guess, is how they explained it to me. And I went through a big healing journey actually with Karri Tidwell many, many years ago. And that is how I healed everything in my body, is through regenerative detox. So I started working on getting my kidneys to filter, getting my lymph system to move, etc. We'll dive into that later. But the point is that I got to a level where on paper, I had nothing wrong with me in blood work. And the reason why I want to explain that is because so many women come into this clinic here, and so many women say, like, on paper, the doctors have no idea why I can't get pregnant. And they label you as what's called unexplained infertility. And that is a really harsh label for many of us women to bear. And I also want to just explain that half the time, or a good percentage, 33% of the time, it's the woman. 33% of the time it's the man, and 33% of the time they don't know the factor. So us women in general, I think we can take a deep breath and just start to look, we have to look at the whole picture. But when we get labeled with this unexplained infertility, it can be incredibly heartbreaking. And then we feel broken. We feel like, what's wrong with us? And I'm not going to actually say there's nothing wrong with you, because there is something wrong at the cellular level. So instead of looking at not getting pregnant or experiencing miscarriage as this like terrible, horrible thing that's just heartbreaking, instead turning that thought around and looking at it as a blessing that your body is not ready to bring in another human, because you aren't firing on all cylinders. Basically, you aren't going to produce a healthy child in the sense of vibrant health, because we pass down our weaknesses. So the body is simply saying, I'm not ready to carry a baby. I'm not ready to grow a human. So first I want to put that point out there. And then after I had done all my detoxification work, and my numbers were good on paper, like my thyroid read normal, I had no antibodies, everything looked great, I still had 2 more miscarriages after that. And I was just puzzled. I was like, what is it? I've done all the things. And I couldn't figure it out. And it was just really, it was more gut and nervous system healing. I wasn't done yet. And so I really dove into that. And I dove into another practice called Arvigo Maya abdominal therapy as well. And so many of us most of what we experience in reproductive health is directly related to our digestive health and to our pituitary health. But then there is a small portion of that can also be related to the placement of your uterus and your nervous system. And so the reason why abdominal therapy is so cool is because it balances the uterus, it puts it in the right place for pregnancy. And we also assess the cisterna chyli, which is your nerve hub, and getting all the nerves to communicate in the endocrine system just through movement. So all abdominal therapy does is open up what's called the 5 systems of flow. So arterial and venous blood, lymphatic system, nervous system, and chi, your overall energy. And those 5 elements are true for abdominal therapy. They're true for regenerative detox. We always have to have flow happening in our system. And so if you are struggling with pregnancy, or you're struggling with PCOS, or you're struggling with painful, heavy periods, this is a sign that your body is in acidosis instead of alkalinity. And so a couple of things I would like to touch on is a heavy period. So we should have no more than 3 to 5 tablespoons of blood in an entire cycle, which is actually not that much blood at all. And most women are shocked when they hear that statistic, because some women can't leave the house. They have so much heavy blood happening. And so this is another example of when we should turn to the animals. So when you look at the animals, they lightly spot. They don't bleed like crazy. And so when we are heavily bleeding, there is sometimes a placement issue in the uterus. Maybe you're posterior anterior, but usually posterior, meaning tilted forward. But usually the heavy blood is a sign of high acidosis, where your body should be able to actually start to reabsorb the blood back into the system. But when it's too acidic, it can't. And it will keep stripping that endometrial lining over and over and using your cycle as a purge time for your body to clean and become more alkaline. And so the heavier the period you have, the heavier lymphatic waste and buildup you have. And that also will connect in with the health of the liver and the gallbladder. So the liver and the gallbladder, the liver actually produces hormones that are sent to the uterus to thin the blood so that you don't have thick, dark clots, also with estrogen production. So if you look at, like, I have clots in my period, I have this, you know, these are all signs that the gut system is off and the liver is off. And then the next thing is understanding, like Rita kind of touched base on it, but your gut microbiome is an entire communication center. And so the things that are responsible, like your hormones, are made in your gut, your serotonin, your dopamine, but we also have something that's called the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And when your microbiota or your microbiome is not healthy, just like Rita said, the cells aren't in communication. So when the cells aren't communicating specifically with the hypothalamus gland and the pituitary gland, then it starts what's called a negative feedback system. And your body will actually start to produce cortisol steroids instead of proper levels of progesterone, proper levels of estrogen. So you're producing steroids and you're not producing proper levels to support sustaining a human life. So there is quite a few things that we could dive in really deep, but this is the basis of it. The basis of it is really understanding the power of having a good gut health, and then the power of your pituitary. So your pituitary gland is like that master gland that communicates with the adrenal gland, that communicates with the hypothalamus, that communicates with all of your hormone function. And a big reason for miscarriage is specifically a progesterone issue. And so when you go into a medical doctor, and one of my miscarriages, after that, they said, well, we can just put you on some progesterone. And I was like, well, won't I just be passing down that same weakness to my baby? And she kind of looked at me like with a head tilt, like, well, I don't know. You know, she was like, but this will just get your level up so that you can sustain the pregnancy. And a lot of women are low on progesterone. If you are low on progesterone, you are having adrenal fatigue. And that is the underlying root cause issue of the miscarriage. So progesterone specifically is, sorry, my husband's coming in, Aslan. Progesterone specifically is responsible for sustaining the pregnancy. When you get past that like 8 to 10 week mark is a really crucial marker for basically when we get past that point, the placenta no longer produces the progesterone. It has to come from the pituitary, and it has to come from the adrenal. So if you have an adrenal weakness, you can sustain the pregnancy all the way up until 8 weeks or all the way up until 10 weeks. And then all of a sudden you lose it and you think like, oh my gosh, I thought I was in the clear. Like, what happened? And this is very simply showing you that the communication system is down and the hormones are not being made properly. And so it's actually a blessing in disguise that the baby is being passed, even though it's heartbreaking, but it's because they aren't going to be able to produce that same environment either. They aren't going to come in with a balanced gut biome. They aren't going to come in with a strong adrenal gland. They aren't going to come in with a strong microbiome or any of the tools that they need to create a healthy myelin sheath, which is your nervous system development. So those are some of the things that I wanted to touch on briefly and just empathize with you all that I'm surprised I got through that without crying. I think that this has been easier with him, but the journey to creating Mila was absolutely heart-wrenching, you know, to have loss after loss after loss. And then, or just to have months of like, oh, there's my period again, not pregnant, not pregnant, not pregnant. So I can feel that deeply with many of you women that are experiencing that. And like the self-blame that gets involved with that is a really, really dark place. So I want to bring some light to this topic and help you understand that we've gotten too far into the wrong environment. And Rita and I and Carrie and all of us on here are actually doing a little 8-week course with Dr. Zach Bush and learning a ton of information that they'll share. But we are at a staggering infertility rate and reproductive health problem rate. I think it's almost 50% of women struggle with reproductive health or fertility, 50%, which is insane. And so if we keep going at this rate in 20 more years, we're going to not be able to produce humans. And so that is something that we have to take care of now. We have to look at our health now. And the main factor that's contributing to this is our chemical pesticide farming and our diet. So we are huge gurus for plant life, of course, but just because you're not 100% plant-based does not mean you can't produce a child. So we have to look at the other factors that are involved. And when we study what's happening in the pesticide and the chemical farming and glyphosate, this specific product or molecule, the glyphosate, is an endocrine disruptor. And it causes a mucoid plaque on the bowel walls. It makes the microvilli not be able to absorb nutrition, and it causes what's called hypoxic injury, which is a low oxygen environment to the gut, where we actually leak this chemical right into our immune system, and it triggers a fight or flight response. So our body is operating in fight or flight. Our nervous system isn't functioning. Our microbiota is wiped out from glyphosate because it's an oral antibiotic. And so the microbiota is not communicating with the HPA axis, and we are not making hormones to support building a life. And that's kind of like the brief version of the deep science. I've got a lot more information I can share at the end, but I don't want to take up too much time. But the final thing I wanted to share is, after I came to all these realizations, healed my body, and then let go of the attachment to getting pregnant, we got pregnant with Mila. And Mila came in, and it was a beautiful pregnancy. There was some other things that we had to work through, but she came in, she's so beautiful and so vibrant. But it took so long to make her that we were like, well, when we wanted her to have a sibling, because now my oldest is 11 and we have a 2-year-old, I was like, well, I want Mila to have a sibling. Maybe we should start trying, because I had this mentality that it's going to take us over a year. And so in my experience with my pregnancy with Mila, it was great. I didn't have any inflammation. I felt pretty good, but I did have that like mom tired. And then when I was postpartum at 7 months, I started having like thinning hair and like skin not looking great and just feeling kind of depleted. And I didn't know what I was missing. And so Rita actually came into my life at that point and introduced me to some powerful things that Mary will talk about in a little bit. And I integrated in sustaining my body with some deep regenerative superfoods and amino acids and gut healing herbs. And that's the only thing I changed. I just added those things into my life. And then we started trying to get pregnant with this little guy. And to our huge surprise, it took one try. We were like, and we're pregnant. So I just wanted to share that when you get into this level of vibrant health and you have your systems communicating, it becomes an easeful situation. And then you know that you're bringing in a life that's healthy, that's vibrant, that's ready, that has an immune system. So if you find yourself, if you're a woman that has yourself in a place of extreme sadness and loss and you're in a rush to get pregnant, I highly encourage you to just slow down, to take some time to heal your body, recommended at least 90 days. and communicate with one of us, and we'll help you get on a protocol and share some amazing herbs that will heal this up. And then you can have a really healthy, happy pregnancy and a healthy, happy child. So I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Karri Tidwell now. And yeah, thanks for your time, everyone.
Well, thanks, Carrie. Thanks. What an incredible, powerful story and healing journey that you shared. Yeah, just beautiful to witness your transformation through all of that and seeing your 2 new beautiful babies. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of that and all that you learned. Like she said, my name's Karri Tidwell. I'm a proud mama of 2. I have a 14-year-old daughter, Kelly, and a 2-year-old little guy, Sonny. And what a beautiful gift that we have, this ability to create another life in a human. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that, like all of the miracles that have to happen to be into place to create this life and all of what our bodies go through. And ever since I was little, I was curious about health. I just didn't have the right guidance and information and education about it. And so through my parents' divorce and like going to Food for Comfort and, you know, eating out of alignment with my body and what I was taught, like wrong information. And so I would drink a lot of milk thinking it was good for me. And I grew up with many ear infections. And to make a long story short, with all that, I've accumulated some not the greatest habits that weren't in alignment with like what my body was designed to eat. And so as I got older, I started experiencing more symptoms with digestion, chronic fatigue, chronic pain. I was getting lightheaded. Just a lot of things were coming up that weren't normal. They were just, like Carrie said, common. But a lot of people think are normal. And as I got older, I started to get allergies. And I was like, I've never had allergies. And so all this stuff was happening. And well, I'll get to that actually later. So let's just go rewind the tape a little bit. And I wanted to share my experience. So after I had these habits, when I first got pregnant with Kelly, when I was in my early 20s, I immediately was like, I want to know what to do, what to eat, what vitamins to take. I had another life I was, you know, raising in my belly. So I wanted to do the best I knew how at that time. And at that time, I didn't have the awareness I have now. And so I'm going to talk about the differences of the 2 pregnancies and what I discovered with changing things up. And so when I was pregnant with her, I did the best I knew how. I didn't have the regenerative awareness that I have. And when I had her, she was breech. And so they did a C-section. And when they cut me open, they found many large cysts. And they were surprised I even got pregnant in the first place. And they debated taking them out. They didn't take them out. They sewed me back up. And I remember when I was recovering from the C-section, I was in so much pain. I lost a ton of blood. I was on pain medication, and I remember being home and just like in pain all day. And they actually had to cut me off. Like they wouldn't give me any more pain medication. And I'm not one to take medication unless I really need it, but I was really in a lot of pain, and I was so exhausted with her after I had her. And so fast forward years later, I still had certain habits because I wasn't that informed with what types of foods and what type of lifestyle I was leading. And so I was still eating similar things from childhood, not knowing any better. And as I got older and wanted to have another baby, I knew that my body was not in a good way. This is where I was getting lightheaded when I was standing up. My digestion was off. My energy was off. I didn't feel right in my body. My menstrual cycle started to get weird, and I would get like sore breasts for like more than just that week. So I knew something was off in my body, and I knew a doctor couldn't fix it. Like I didn't want to take a pill. I didn't want to do anything like that. I knew I wanted to go into some type of healing, and I'm super grateful that I found regenerative healing, and I learned about Dr. Morse, and learned the regenerative healing protocols, and it like a light bulb switched, and I was like, this is what I need. I need to like cleanse my body and get it as healthy as I can before I get pregnant. Because what I learned, and Carrie touched on this, is we pass down our genetic strengths and our weaknesses to our kids. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I'm like not feeling well in my own body, I don't want to pass this down to another child. If I already had the lightheadedness, digestion, I wasn't feeling well, I didn't have a lot of energy. And so I knew I had to make a shift. And as I did that, I wanted to take at least a year to really like thoroughly get all those symptoms that were causing me harm to like not be there anymore. And so I did the regenerative work. After 3 months, my menstrual cycle was like the best it had ever been. And that's one thing that I didn't know. The heavier it is, the more toxins and acids are in our body that are just trying to clean out to make way for a baby. So if there's any of you that are struggle with the menstrual cycle, it's a great sign to get the body back into balance. Same with allergies, same with any symptoms that prevent digestion. All of that stuff is just showing that our body is out of alignment. And mine was definitely out of alignment. And I wanted to bring it in the best way that I could, and then consciously conceive. And when I decided to do that, we got pregnant on the first try. After I like did that and balanced out, we got pregnant with Sunny on the first try, and went through that pregnancy. I ended up having to get another C-section. And so when they cut me open this time, I had 2 small cysts. Well, I knew this before, but I had 2 very small cysts. So I cleansed a lot of those large cysts out before. And I also, they were surprised at how good the scar tissue looked. So I attribute that to all of the work getting my body ready that had happened. And I barely bled after him. And I was just like comparing both C-sections. So 12 years later, you would think, your body would get a little bit more on the degenerative side, but I was like regenerating and feeling better 12 years later than I was earlier. And so I barely bled this time. I think I only took pain medication, if at all, for only a week. And then when I was home, I didn't need it anymore. My energy was so different. Even though you're sleep deprived because you're not sleeping through the night, I didn't feel as exhausted as I did with my daughter. And so my energy levels were better. Just so many things from creating this lifestyle shift and regenerative shift happened that I attribute to a healthy recovery too as well. So it's not just about getting your body ready, but then also like, can you bounce back? Can you take care of yourself afterwards? And I got to experience the difference in that with both pregnancies. So yeah, sleep was better. I want to make sure I covered everything. So one of the biggest gifts that I believe our bodies can give us are having these warning signs presented. So if there's anything in your body that isn't feeling normal, but it might be common because a lot of women are going through it, take a look at that and seeing how those symptoms can be sacred messengers to bring us back into alignment, whether it's digestion, our hormones are off, pain, anything that's presenting in your body as a symptom that you want to fix or get better could be a sign of what you need to focus on to get your body as healthy as possible. So we pass down genetic strengths and weaknesses, because it's not out of the blue that all of a sudden, babies are born with cysts and tumors and leukemia. Like we create this unconsciously, not realizing the parents before didn't take this time to learn regenerative healing and how to get the body in the best way. And it's no one's fault, because we have an environment in a society that we're spraying chemicals, where there's so many toxic chemicals, and what we put on our skin and what we drink and breathe and all that stuff. So it's just really, once you learn all of that information, you can take control with your own health and with your own home and start there. Because I remember when I learned all this stuff, it could be overwhelming, all the things that need to shift. Like I changed my toothpaste, I changed my skincare, I changed what I put on my skin, the types of clothes I wear, all that stuff plays a role. Plastic, with too many plastics too, not only does it ruin the environment, but when we like microwave stuff in plastic, we get the more estrogenic qualities from all of that, and that messes up with our hormones as well. And so like just being more conscious of everything I buy and bring in my home and put on my body can make a huge difference in my health, or in our health and our environment. So really vote with your dollar on getting products that don't have these chemicals in them. You know, buying organic, buying local, supporting regenerative farming can be really helpful. Two really beautiful plant medicines that can be helpful is red raspberry leaf. That's great for toning the uterus. And I recommend, even if people are wanting to get pregnant, to start drinking this before, so your body's used to it while you are pregnant, to drink it during pregnancy. Another thing, what Carrie mentioned, is my abdominal massage. That's incredible, I think, for not only fertility stuff, but digestion, misplaced uterus, and just connecting back in with your body. And with that treatment, you learn self-care. And so seeking that out is so helpful for men and women, to make sure there's no congestion anywhere and things are flowing well. And then another thing that is helpful with fertility is a flower essence called Easter lily. And this is really helpful as well. So if someone's struggling, obviously do all of the regenerative stuff, get your body into balance, and you can take these amazing plants to help assist in that. And so one of my biggest gifts is listening to my body, because not only did I want to make way for my future baby, I'm feeling a lot better in my own body and my own health, my skin, my energy, my digestion, all of that. So it's like a blessing in disguise when you have those symptoms presenting, because it gives you a roadmap of what to do to focus on. And I'd like to end with an analogy or a formula that Professor Arnold Ehret says in his book called The Mucusless Diet Healing System, and it's V equals P minus O, which is vitality equals power minus obstruction. And so when we move the obstructions to the flow of energy in our body, in our lymphatic system, in our colon, in our anything that's congested, we remove that, we have that vitality and power, and things can start to flow, and our cells can communicate better, and things can be more in balance. And so I'll leave you with that and pass it off to you, Mary Beth.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carrie. And man, there's been a lot of really, really good information here. I hope you guys have been taking it in, taking notes. You know, I'm in such agreement with the physical preparation of our bodies, but I'm also want to bring in that element of the spiritual nurturing that we have to do when we're going on this journey of trying to get pregnant or being pregnant. Because we're bringing in a whole new energetic being into our bodies. And so it's really important that we have some spiritual nurturing and emotional nurturing that we do as well. So I just wanted to lead us through a short little meditation that can be really helpful if you're trying to get pregnant, or if you're already pregnant. And so I invite you all just to close your eyes for a minute. We'll do this really short. Ideally, you would be in a place where you're laying on your back in a very quiet room, and just closing your eyes and taking a deep breath. And imagining that your eyes and your nose are actually located in your lower abdomen, and that with each breath, you're breathing in a white light directly into your reproductive organs. And as you exhale, you're recharging your womb with this divine white light, this divine energy that's coming in. Inhaling that white light again, exhaling to recharge. And you're letting go of all the noise and all the business taking place in your life, and just allowing stillness and the light to be your sacred mission in this moment. And just being with that for another moment. And then having a big exhalation. So this simple meditation can be one that is such a good idea to get in practice with. Ideally, you would do it for a longer period of time. Maybe you have 5 minutes, maybe you have a half hour. But the idea of doing it daily is what is really going to bring in that energy and that flow of life being created in your body, because like Carrie was saying, it's a magical, amazing thing. And so really taking the time to honor that and honor what your body has to go through in order to do it. I kind of like to think of the pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, and postpartum experience as like you're having a dinner party. say you're going to cook this amazing meal and you're going to bring over some of your most important guests, important people in your life. So prior to having the dinner party, you really got to clean house. You got to mop the floors, do some laundry, clean the dishes before you start cooking, and just really make your house or your body presentable for all these guests or the guest that's coming in. And so for me, something I learned at a younger age, I, like Carrie, I had some, irregular periods and really heavy periods and a lot of clotting and a lot of discomfort and pain. I would have symptoms, pre-period symptoms for like 2 weeks, where I'd have cravings and bloating, and my boobs would be so sore and swollen. And I thought that was normal, but it's not normal, it's common. And so one thing that I came across was this idea of regenerative healing, and that ideally women actually prepare their bodies for 3 years before pregnancy, and men even longer, like a 7-year period, because the man is the seed. And so if we're really talking about conscious conception, it's about this idea of really cleaning house prior to this experience, because anything that you have, any inflammation or acidosis or congestion in the lymphatic system, that's going to be passed down to your being. So there's this kind of responsibility that we need to take into our own hands of, creating strength for the next generations. As in what we're seeing now is almost weakened genes. We're seeing a lot of kids coming in with a lot of allergies, a lot of gut microbiome disruption, leukemias, these things from the get-go. And had the parents cleaned themselves prior to, maybe some of these things could be more avoided. So really cleaning house prior to. And then when you get pregnant, this is the idea of like when you're ready to cook your big meal for your guests to come, you want to take your time, you want to be methodical, you don't want to skimp on the ingredients, you want to let the ingredients sit and simmer and really enjoy the experience and have that process of spiritual nurturing and real deep nourishment, because you're not only needing to nourish yourself, but you're needing to nourish another being. And the process of having a child is so strenuous on the body. I mean, your body pulls calcium and magnesium and iron and everything from what you have. So if you don't have a reserve to begin with, you're gonna, on the other side, end up depleted, like many of us do postpartum. So this idea of like deep nourishment during the process. And then afterwards, postpartum, same thing. After you've had the guest, you've had your dinner party and everybody leaves, it's about cleaning house again. It's about getting things back to where they belong, doing the mopping again, cleaning up, because we tend to store stagnation and lymphatic congestion when we're pregnant, because we're doubling our blood and our organs are working double time. So after you have your baby, having this process of regenerative healing where you're really cleansing, really alkalizing, maybe I shouldn't say cleansing, but just cleaning house in terms of making sure you're getting the acids out of the body and the inflammation out of the body, really bringing in a lot of antioxidant rich foods, and these types of things can be really, really important for postpartum. And so my experience, I have 2 children. I have an almost 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and I did a lot of pre-cleaning prior to my pregnancy with my first child, because I was having these symptoms of heavy periods and going through all that in my younger years. I did a lot of herbal healing. I worked on my lymphatic system through alkalizing raw foods. And so I had that part pretty dialed. So my pregnancy with my first son was really awesome. I didn't experience any swelling, any extra inflammation. I had a tiny bit of morning sickness. The end, I had like a little bit of heartburn and a little bit of restless leg syndrome that I've had since I was a kid, which I'm working on. But I had a really good pregnancy. But the part that I didn't really focus on as much was the postpartum re-nourishment and replenishment. And that was partially because I was a single mom and I was really busy. I was working a bunch of jobs and I was learning this new idea of taking care of another being. So I was often putting the other being before myself, as we do as parents. And I was just learning the balance. And when my son was 16 months postpartum, I really was starting to feel the effects. Like Carrie was saying, my hair was getting a lot thinner. I was losing a lot of hair. I was just feeling really tired and depleted. And this is when I started incorporating a superfood organic protocol into my diet to really deeply, deeply nourish and get some of those minerals that I had used, giving to my son through pregnancy back into my body. And once I did that, it took about 2 months of taking these nutrients on a regular day-to-day basis. And then I finally was like, wow, this is me. I feel like me again. Like I hadn't even realized how depleted I had gotten. And literally 2 months later, I got pregnant with my next son. Kind of same experience as both Carrie's. As first try, I wasn't even trying actually. It just, after replenishing and renourishing it happened. And so some of the things that I noticed just from the differences of my pregnancies is in incorporating this organic superfood protocol. Carrie was talking about that. We bring in some plant-based amino acids. And for one, with my second child, when I got pregnant, if I ever at the tiniest bit had a little bit of morning sickness, I would take my amino acids and it would nip it in the bud like that, because it's the cleanest source of protein that we can give to our bodies. And so that was an amazing incorporation to really help with that. And I've also noticed having those in my system as I'm nursing, my milk is just so sustained. I have an amazing supple flow of milk. So incorporating those amino acids were kind of a critical piece that I think I didn't have with my first one. The second thing is just, if you're trying to get pregnant or you are pregnant or postpartum, incorporating as many organic, whole food, fresh, alkalizing foods as you can, particularly melons, berries, citrus, grapes, things that are very hydrating, that are really going to hydrate the tissues of the cells and really oxygenate our cells so we can get to that cellular health like Rita was talking about and opened up so beautifully in the beginning. The third thing I noticed that was really amazing to incorporate, which is part of the organic superfood protocol, is a very micronutrient, raw organic shake. Because one thing I noticed is just eating a meal, I really wasn't getting in the amount of nutrients that I needed postpartum. And so incorporating this shake, I was able to have it on hand. I think that's another reason I got depleted in this with my first kid postpartum, was because I was so busy. I'd reach for some fruit and eat that, but then I would run out of fruit and I would find myself reaching for a piece like a bagel or something instead of actually really nourishing and hydrating my body. And so having something on hand that is easy, accessible, and very, very nutrient dense is essential for not only your baby, what he's getting through your milk, but also for rebuilding. The other thing we incorporate is a tart cherry concentrate, and tart cherries are an amazing, amazing fruit. They're super good for inflammation, they're free radical fighting, and they're the only food and fruit on the planet that actually has naturally occurring melatonin. So what it does when you ingest it, it helps your body get back into natural circadian rhythms. And as we know, the whole experience of pregnancy and postpartum can be your sleep patterns just go crazy. So the idea is that when you ingest tart cherries, it helps you to sink into deep REM sleep. And when you do this, you're not necessarily sleeping longer periods of time, but you're sleeping deeper when you are sleeping. And that's something I incorporated with my second baby. And, I take that before bed every night, and it goes through my milk, and he sleeps deep, I sleep deep. And even though maybe I'm only getting 3 hour, 4 hour stints of sleep at a time, I feel like I've slept deep versus just kind of like my eyes fluttering the whole time or my adrenals kind of going off. So that's a really helpful incorporation, as well as, if you're trying to get pregnant or you're pregnant or postpartum, it's really important to let go of, being on technology at minimum an hour before bed, and sleeping in dark, because like Carrie Drinkwine was talking about, our endocrine system has so much to do, our parathyroid or pituitary or adrenal glands, it has so much to do with the health of our body in preparation for housing this being in us. And so technology can really throw off our endocrine system and our adrenal glands. So taking a break 1 hour before sleep at minimum can be really, really critical for letting the body reset and replenish and just reboot. Other tip that I wanted to come in with is Karri Tidwell already suggested it, but red raspberry leaf tea and red clover tea, as well as nettle tea, can be really, really beneficial to start incorporating before you get pregnant, or if you're trying to get pregnant. They really help with iron levels. They help strengthen the uterine walls, as well as dates. So if you
are trying to get pregnant, I would suggest eating up to 6 dates a day. And if you are pregnant, they actually help with a smoother birth because they strengthen the uterine walls and just help with the birthing process. So dates are amazing. And then in terms of really nourishing yourself with other deep nutrients, things like chlorophyll and high quality vitamin C from a whole food source will really help your body to have stable iron levels and energy levels during your pregnancy. So it's a really good thing to start doing before you get pregnant, to really build strong blood and strong blood vessels prior to pregnancy. And then if you're in the phase of trying to get pregnant and you're looking for more, herbs to incorporate and foods to incorporate, some of my suggestions for foods, these are actually, if you know of Anthony Williams, he's the author of the Miracle Medium book. He talks about incorporating bananas, avocados, cherries, like I was talking about, asparagus, celery, leafy greens, dark leafy greens, sprouts and microgreens, and again, the raspberry leaf and nettle tea, all to really just start nourishing your body prior to. And then if you are looking for more herbal support, the man, Dr. Robert Morse, who all of us here have trained with and studied with, he has some amazing male reproductive and female reproductive tonics to really go in there and strengthen the uterine walls and really just feed the reproductive organs for both male and female. So that's something you could reach out to any of us for. Check him out online at the Dr. Robert Morse Herbal Health Clinic. He's got some really amazing reproductive tonic blends. And then the last component that I would say is really essential is what Carrie already talked about, but balancing the gut microbiome. So what they're finding is that babies, they're finding glyphosate in babies' umbilical cords nowadays, which is really scary because that means babies are coming into this world already with their gut microbiome compromised. And like I was saying, that's why we're seeing so much food sensitivities and asthmas, and the list goes on of our young kids and babies coming in already not healthy. I think a quote from my mother's guru, BKS Iyengar, he says, you're lucky if you're born healthy. And that to me is kind of sad because we can control it in a lot of ways. We can control what we're putting into our bodies, and we can control the consciousness that we're putting in so that our babies can come out feeling full and alive and at their best selves. So cleansing the gut microbiome includes, alkalizing foods and some of these herbs, but also getting the glyphosate out of your gut microbiome prior to conceiving. And also, it can really help with postpartum depression and these types of things. And as we know, when you get pregnant, you get a whole flood of hormones coming in the body. And so your moods can kind of get really out of whack. And the more stabilized your gut microbiome is prior to that, the more stabilized your moods are going to be, because there are so many neurotransmitters in the gut. And so much of our hormone production is in the gut, including, neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. And so when you get that really balanced prior to, you're going to have a better ability to have mood stabilization during the process. And I can honestly say, after I incorporated what we call our biomedic, which really helps getting the glyphosate out and restabilizing the gut, I haven't had an ounce of postpartum with my second kid at all. With my first son, Faya, I had a little bit. I could feel postpartum depression kind of creeping in on me at times, but with my second, my moods have been so stable. I've just been really balanced the entire time. So with all that being said, if you're like, wow, this has been good information, and I want to learn more about preparing the body, and I want to learn more about nourishing the body once you've been pregnant and postpartum, we do offer these 30-day ultimate lifestyle transformations. And we're actually having one come up. We're hosting it, myself and Carrie and Rita, and we start September 8th. And what it looks like is you get the organic superfood protocol I was talking about, which includes your amino acids, your tart cherry, a really micronutrient dense raw shake, as well as a biomedic gut rebuilder. And then if you're pre-pregnancy, we also incorporate a parasite cleanser so that you can start getting some of these acidic waste and inflammation out of the body. And if you're pregnant or postpartum, you just don't do the parasite part. So we start with that, and then we also guide you through a 30-day program of just really incorporating and nourishing, alkalizing organic foods and herbs. And we actually have an online platform where we lead you through. It basically has an abundant amount of resources and informations and videos where we're talking about how to really get to this level of regenerative health that we're talking about. And we do weekly question and answer Zooms so that you can be really supported and you can be in the experience together with other people, and we can learn from each other and ask questions. And so it's really about, we're just trying to offer this as a vehicle for people who are trying to get into that pre-cleansing period of like, I really want to cleanse this vessel for what potentially could be coming in. And then also, you know, nourish if you've experienced pregnancy and you've done that and you're feeling like, wow, it's time for me. It's time for some self-care. It's time for some rejuvenation and nourishment. It's also fit for that too. So I just want to thank you all, everybody, for coming this morning, and I hope you got some good nuggets in there that you can apply to your life and share with your friends and family. And we will be sending out an email. If you register to our event through Eventbrite, we'll send out a follow-up email with the recording of this. You can watch it again, and we'll also send some details on our transformation coming up, as well as, you know, incorporate some of this information kind of as like bulletin notes for you guys to have and just kind of dive in deeper. So I think we have a little bit of time to go into some question and answer if anybody's watching that really has some more questions they'd like answered or to talk about what we've shared. So thank you guys so much.
I just wanted to add one thing that I forgot. I wanted to add just a couple things. I was a little distracted with my husband coming in and Ash and all that. But I wanted to talk about the release of the egg and sperm. So we take 90 days to release an egg. So the egg that you release on this ovulation is from 90 days prior. Same with the sperm, it's from 90 days prior. So what you have done the 90 days before you're trying to conceive is incredibly important. So that's why we all recommend a minimum of a 90-day protocol before you start becoming pregnant. Of course, you know, it would be better to do a year of lymphatic cleaning, but at least give yourself 90 days to really go through that cycle to bring in a healthier egg and healthier sperm. And then the other thing that I wanted to tie in was understanding B vitamins. And so there's a common misconception that you can only get B vitamins from animals, and it's just completely untrue. It's actually, they're made by your gut, which is a sign that we are so depleted that we don't even know where B vitamins come from. So B vitamins are actually made by your gut, and they're an essential part of your adrenal and your nervous system function. And if you are low on B vitamins, that's the first sign that you have, or one of the many signs, but it's an absolute sign that you have adrenal fatigue. Because these B vitamins are an essential part of also producing your liver enzymes, your adrenal hormones, and your blood health. And so these are actually produced by the gut. And then when they're produced in basically anything that depletes this, so like the glyphosate that we were talking about completely wipes out your B vitamins and your microbiota, but even up to just 2 ounces of coffee or alcohol a day will deplete your B vitamins. So if you are trying to conceive, or if you have really heavy periods, really look at what's going on, what am I doing to my gut biome? And then if you have this environment of low B vitamins, you're lacking magnesium, and magnesium is actually stored in the blood, which a lot of people don't know about. And this is where the enteric nervous system, this is all this system that we've all touched on, is called the enteric nervous system. And it's actually a mesh-like, it's like a mesh-like myelin sheath of neurons that communicate with each other to create healthy digestion, reproductive, and hormone health. So when you have an imbalance in this area, your entire enteric nervous system is down, and then pregnancy becomes pretty difficult. So we just want to bring light not only on pregnancy, but men even having issues of like feeling like you can't fully empty your bladder, or you have to push your stream out, is a sign of prostate inflammation, which is coming from lymphatic accumulation. So how acidic is the man's diet? Premature ejaculation or any of those things are all poor reproductive health. Those aren't just something that happens with age. That's actually due to the inflammation in the prostate, the inflammation in the varicosity of the blood, and what's happening with the 5 systems of flow. So the man is just as responsible as the female when we're trying to get pregnant. So if you are a woman here and you're trying to get pregnant, talk to your partner, get on board with both of you co-creating together a healthy, conscious human. And if you're not trying to get pregnant, but you've just been confused about your periods and your cycles, start with your gut health. Clean up the gut, and if it's still not better, then you need to go to the pituitary gland and really address with some pituitary supportive herbs, or possibly a glandular if you're really degenerated. And any one of us can chat with you about that at any time. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, we'll happily answer. Well, we'll go ahead and end our live stream on Facebook here. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Okay. Anybody have anything to add, or everybody good? Let's see.
I can just say thanks for this information. I just truly feel it's really vital that this awareness gets out there so we can, you know, start with ourselves and our homes and spread this awareness out, because at the rate we're going, we're not going to be regenerating healthy humans. And this information, I feel like really saved my own life. And I'm breaking that chain, that pattern from my dad. He passed away from kidney failure, and I had warning signs about kidney stuff as a child. So I got a lot of kidney infections, and so that's just kind of how the weaknesses was passed. My dad had kidney stuff later in life. I was experiencing it earlier. And so if we can really get to the root of this stuff right away, we can really help ourselves and our families. And so even if you didn't do this work before you had kids, it's okay. You can just start now and start your kids off now on a healthy path. And we're going to be sharing about raising healthy kids on the next one. And I'm so excited to share this subject because I just feel really passionate about it, just as well as getting our bodies ready to conceive, but what we can do if we already have kids, and how to transition and all that. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, ladies, for sharing all your wisdom, love, and knowledge.
Yeah, and our Raising Healthy Kids next free workshop is next September 20th, which is the second to last Sunday in the month, same time. And we will create an Eventbrite for that as well, and include that in the follow-up email. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you everyone so much. Appreciate you all.
Bye.
Bye.